Okay, how to make collage paper from scrap paper. You need some scrap paper. It could be a newspaper, magazine, an old book, old worksheets, your sketchbook. You just need some old paper to work with. Okay, so to transform this plain paper into something more colorful, we're going to use some simple art materials. So you just want to use something simple to take that from just a plain black and white sheet of paper to something colorful and interesting that we could use to make art. I don't like to do voiceovers because my hands never match up with what I'm saying. Okay, so now I'm just going to use my Crayola crayon to color over the text. So I have the background of the paper showing through a little bit, that white color. I have the text, and then I have color on top of that. You could do fill it in solid. You could do stripes. I'm doing all my papers in blue for a monochromatic collage. You don't have to do blue, but it does need to be monochromatic. So sort of shades and variations of one color. So I'm doing two different blue colors on my stripes. And then you could also go back and add marker in between there if you wanted to add like another layer of interest on that paper. Okay, so another thing that you can do with your markers, well, you can color with your markers or draw with your markers, but we can kind of paint with our markers. So I've just got my water-based Crayola marker, has to be a water-based marker, and I'm gonna just scribble over my paper. And then I'm gonna use my brush and water to kind of smear that water-based marker around, and it creates a paint-like effect. You don't have to use a brush. You could use a wet paper towel or a spray bottle and get the same effect. So it's almost like watercolor. Okay. If you have watercolor, you don't have to have watercolor. If you happen to have a set, watercolor is a super easy way to transform your scrap paper into something colorful that we could use in a collage. So you just watercolor right over it. You could also use the back if you didn't want to see the print on there. I like to see the lettering on there. That's just a personal preference. So I have a watercolor paper that I painted earlier, and now it's dry. And you can draw or paint right on top of that dry watercolor. So I'm just drawing some curly cues on top. I like that curly cue shape. I use it a lot in my work. So just drawing on that. And again, it's just watercolor that I let dry, and then I'm just drawing on top of it. So I have another sheet of watercolor that I painted, and it's dry, and then I just drew on top of that watercolor. This is a Crayola marker, blue and purple, that I scribbled on my paper, and then did the water on top of it. I let that dry, and then I'm just going to draw on top of it. So we're just like creating this collection of collage papers that we will start cutting up tomorrow to create our collage guitar. So here's it's a book page that I painted on, and then that's actually the marker that I painted and then drew on top. That's a texture rubbing. I put my paper on top of the heater and then scraped a crayon back and forth. You maybe did that in elementary school. And then watercolored on top, and there's also the crayon resist on the other side. So you just want to make this little collection of papers using a monochromatic color scheme, lots of pattern, lots of texture. Make it as interesting as you possibly can.